So, welcome everyone. Firstly, this is the TBS Pioneer Series, Pioneer Profile Series, and we're so happy today to continue this with Eugene Smith. They are joining us actually at Duncan Showroom in BC. So, thank you in advance to Ted, John, and Duncan Showroom for hosting us and both Eugene tonight. Bill Munson is here as well, as you can see, who will conduct the interview with his questions. And thank you so much, Bill, for joining us. Just very quickly, so the interview will take around 45 minutes, and then we will have 15 minutes for audience Q&A. If you have any questions, and if you're registered on Zoom with us today, you can just drop your questions on the Q&A box or on the chat box. But we're also live streaming from TBS Facebook page as well, so you can just leave your questions on the comment section there. We will look and see and try to answer all of those at the end of the interview. And before we start, I just wanted to thank you to our year-round supporters, Toronto Arts Council, Ontario Arts Council, as well as the Government of Canada. And we'll leave the microphone to Bill without further ado. But just before that, I just wanted to remind that TBS is a not-for-profit charity. And if you would like to make a donation during these hard times, it's tax deductible, and you can do so very easily through our website, which is www.torontoBlueSociety.com. And on that note, I'm going to turn Bill and Eugene to start the interview, and I'm going to take myself out of the screen.
Okay, thank you, Uma.
Thank you, Uma.
How are you doing?
I'm here, Bill.
Very good. Good to see you.
Good to see
I
you
don't know
too.
if people could all hear it if they came in early in the intro. They were playing Howlin'.
Yeah.
Your first record.
Yes.
It was wonderful to hear it. It sounded terrific.
Yeah, that was one of the songs with the Majestics. Jay Smith and the Majestics. That was our first single, our first record, and it was being played on Toronto radio on Chum.
You must have been proud.
Oh yeah, it felt really good. Yeah. It was a lot of fun.
Were you out of high school by then?
Was I out of high school by then? Let me see. No. Geez, I have to think about that now, because was I still in high school? No, I think I was out of high school by that time. Yeah.
So you didn't have any backslapping from your schoolmates?
No, not at all.
Yeah, my classmate Eugene on the radio. That would have been exciting.
Yeah, no. So I just had to phone people and let them know that our song was on the radio. Yeah. And the song on the other side, B side, was a song that my first song I ever wrote was called "Driven from Home," and that was on the B side.
Well, I've been watching you live since '77, I guess. I've never seen you playing that song.
No. No, I never did it on stage. Oh, I maybe with the Majestics, but after that, no, I never did it on stage again.
Yeah. Well, it's a good song, but it's certainly not Chicago blues like that.
Yeah, it was fun. It was fun.
Yeah, I can imagine. Where were you living? Where did you grow up?
I grew up in New Toronto and Mimico. Went to New Toronto Public School, Second Street School, and then I went to Mimico High School. And I got, I tell people I got, well, it's true, I got 4 years of high school. And you had to go to grade 13 then. They had a grade 13. But I tell people I got 4 years of high school in Mimico. And the 4 years was 2 years in grade 9 and 2 years in grade 10. I was a slow starter.
Well, it's got you this far.
Excuse me?
It's got you this far.
Yeah, it's got me this far being slow.
No, you'd never know. You'd never know. Yeah. Music in the family?
Yeah, I had, I was brought up with my aunt and uncle who were my mom and dad.
Mhm.
And they were my mom and dad until I was 16. And then I found out that they weren't my mom and dad, that my mom and dad were, well, my actual mom was, uh, mother was a musician,
Uh-huh.
and she sang and played in piano, jazz. And my actual father was a bass player who played with Duke Ellington and people like that, Illinois Jacquet, and traveled around the world 4 times. He was part of that music when it was being created, the jazz that we listen to today,
Mhm.
Count Basie, you name them, he's on record with Charlie Bird and people like that, even Neil Diamond, and James Brown, his bio says that he was a road musician and a studio musician, but he was never the leader of his own band. So the two of them got together with Hot Lips Page in Hamilton, and they had a love romance for 2 weeks. And I'm an actual love child because they never saw each other ever again. They went, yeah, he went back to the States. Well, he was from Canada, from Windsor, but he went back to New York, and she went back to Toronto and then found out she was pregnant with me a month later. And so she had me. This is like 76 years ago. So she had me, but her brother and his wife took me as their own.
No.
Yeah, yeah.
And did you meet the father? Did you meet?
Um, I met my dad when I was 38 years old. I decided to find him if he was still alive. Now, my biological mother, she was still alive, so I asked her, did she know? And she says, well, as far as I know, he's still lives in New York City, and he's playing bass and tuba because that's what he played, upright bass. So I phoned the Musicians Union in New York City, and the lady says, I said, I'm looking for a bass player named Al Lucas. And she says, just a minute. And a couple seconds later, she comes back. She says, well, his phone number is da 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 da. And now I've got his phone number. So yeah, there's more to it. I had to, I was very nervous, right? So I phoned him up, and he answered the phone. And I, I told him that I was a writer for a black magazine in Toronto, and I was assigned to come down to New York City and take pictures of him and write a story because we do stories on jazz musicians from yesteryear. And he said, "Oh, it's really nice to know somebody's thinking about me." And so then I said, "I'll let you know in a week or so when I'm coming down." So we hung up, and now I'm thinking, well, I don't write for any magazine, and I don't even own a camera. So I waited for about a week, and then I phoned him back up, and I said, and he answered the phone. I said, Al Lucas? He says, yes. I said, this is Eugene Smith up in Toronto. I said, I'm not really a writer for a magazine. I'm your son. And then I started naming names and everything, and so I ended up saying, is it okay if I come down to visit? And so he said, sure. So I went down and I visited him, and I have 4 half sisters and 2 half brothers in the States that are Americans.
Uh-huh.
And that's on my dad's side. And on my mother's side, biological mother's side, she was married twice, had 2 daughters by her first husband, and then he passed away. She remarried again and had 2 sons by her second husband. So I have 4 half brothers and 6 half sisters, but I'm an only child. Because, well, except for my 2 brothers that are actually in the family tree, they're actually my cousins, but they're my brothers. They'll always
Yeah.
be my brothers, like they're my brothers. I don't even look at them as being my cousins, they're my brothers. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I've spoken to one of the sisters, and she certainly sees you as her brother.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, so that's a complicated story, but it's an interesting story.
Yeah, yeah. It keeps me going.
Yeah, well, I guess you certainly came by your music and kept honestly on both sides like
Yes, yes.
that. Just getting back to the early days in music, I know that a lot of the young singers of the early '60s in Toronto, like yourself, would go down to the Concord Tavern for Saturday matinees and I dig out the courage to sing with Ronnie Hawkins and the Hawks.
Oh, yeah.
And I understand that you were one such person. Do you have any memories of those days?
Well, going down to the Concord Tavern was something that all the musicians that were trying to do something in music, all us young guys and females, girls, we all went down to the Concord Tavern on Saturday afternoons to see Ronnie Hawkins and the Hawks. And one side of the room was for people that were 21 and over because the age limit was 21 for drinking. And the rest of the room on the other side was for people that were 20 and younger. And you had Dominic Toriano, you had everybody you could think of that singers. George Oliver was there, all the guitar players, Bobby Schwab, you name them. We were all there. Drummers, all the drummers up in like teenage drummers in bands from bands in Toronto, and we would go down there every Saturday afternoon. And the Hawks, Ronnie would be there, but then he would invite different people, uh, musicians and singers up on stage to perform with the band.
Do you remember what you would have performed?
Um, well, at that particular time, I probably would have done. I remember doing "What'd I Say"
Mm-hmm.
because I was into Ray Charles. I was into Ray Charles at the time. I might have done a Sam Cooke tune or a blues song, something of that genre. Yeah.
How about Bobby's Blue Band?
Um, well, the Bobby Blue Bland tune that everybody would sing back then was Stormy Monday. that was that was a biggie. Or Turn On Your Love Light.
Yeah.
And uh, Levon and Robbie and those guys, they all knew those songs. So I think I remember doing Turn On Your Love Light with them,
Mhm.
and because that was another Bobby Bland tune.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I can hear you doing that in my mind. Anyway.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. But how did you? I guess in that same period, that must have been around the same period as the Majestics were going, and you had your big hit record with Howling.
Yeah, the Majestics. It was around the time of the Majestics. Yeah, yeah.
Mhm.
Because yeah, little did I know that I was going to work with Ronnie later, But at that time, yeah, it was a lot of fun. And one of the things that I always noticed back then is that because basically we were playing at teenage dances in halls, like wherever the halls, Mazarik, Farmers Market, Trocadero, where the dances were, and the teenagers were, but we all got dressed up. Everybody, the girls got dressed up, the guys got dressed up. We went for hairdos and like it was an event for us. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
It was like then what happened was the hippie scene came in, and that all changed. Then it was not people didn't get dressed up as much anymore. And then what brought it back was disco, because everybody got dressed up for disco. Anyways, I always noticed that as I was going along as the years went by.
Yeah, well, I remember those years. And I certainly know what you're talking about.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, and with Hawkins, you must have had a stage uniform. Did you have a stage uniform when you were with Hawkins?
Oh, with Ronnie. Oh,
Yeah.
I'm sorry. Yeah, we had a semi tux
Mhm.
with two
Yeah.
pairs of black pants. So, and they were made out of mohair. Mohair suits, semi tuxes, with the black tie and everything. Yeah.
Wow. Did you get to take them with you when you left the band?
Well, yes, you did. You just, yeah, you got who's going to want to wear my clothes?
Did you ever wear them again yourself?
Did I ever wear them again?
Yeah. When was the last time you
No, I didn't. Once I left Ronnie, I didn't. Once I left Ronnie, I didn't know. I didn't wear them again. I just started wearing whatever, I just, but I would get dressed up, but I didn't wear the semi-tux anymore.
Well, what did you do when you left Hawkins a few
I
years ago?
cried. I cried. When I left Ronnie, well, Ronnie used to say, "Son, one day you're gonna be the leader of your own band, and you know how you'll find out how hard it is, you know." And as soon as I left Ronnie, I tried starting band. It was difficult to try and do a band because number one, I was nobody. I mean, people knew me from Ronnie Hawkins, but outside of that, like if I was going to be playing someplace where we never played before, but our band was going there because the agency sent us there, they might not, they would use the Ronnie Hawkins thing. This was, singer who used to be with Ronnie Hawkins, but yeah, it was difficult at first to try and get work, but I went through a lot of bands for quite a number of years actually.
Hmm. Anyone that stands out?
In which way? In which way?
Well, as really good or really bad, especially really good, because I know that you played with
Well,
musicians with Hawkins.
well, the musicians that I used were usually good musicians, like, up and coming musicians, good players, you know what I mean? Because I got that from Ronnie, you pick, when you're going to have a band, you try and get really good people there, or somebody that has the potential, you can see it, and all they have to do is work on it.
Mhm.
So most of the people that I would be with were up and coming or already good at what they were doing, whatever instrument it was.
Mhm. So I guess was one of those guys that you played with Hawkins is John Till, um, who went on to considerable acclaim, and I think he did some other work with you after that.
John, yeah, John ended up going and being the guitar player with Janis Joplin,
Hmm.
the Full Tilt Boogie Band, and Rick Bell was in the band, and he also had played with Ronnie. Um, but it didn't. It wasn't until I would say it wasn't until oh, Snap Crackle and Pop was the name of the band. Um, that we started to really get into being a band, and we stayed together for a little, not very long, but it was long enough that we got to open up for the Can Heat. The band got to be good enough to open up for Can Heat, at McMaster's University in Hamilton. Um, and then from there were different bands like Lucifer, the Warm Up Band. They were very good bands. Now, Lucifer was not my band. I became one of the singers in the band, and then I became the singer in the band. But so those musicians and those bands were really good. And then after that, I had other bands, and the musicians were always good.
Well, the Lucifer, I'd like to spend a bit of time with because that was, as far as I know, that was the first album with Lucifer, and could you tell us a bit about that?
Um, Lucifer was a band that when I joined them, they were doing songs by Blood, Sweat, and Tears, Chicago. It was a horn band, and Bobby Washington was in the band, and I think he was the only one in the band that I actually knew. Um, I was trying to think of who the other musicians was, but it was a very good band. And then I joined, And when we were working, they were working all the time. When I joined, all of a sudden we weren't working because we started doing original material.
Mhm.
And it became the band Lucifer with and we recorded one album actually down in Detroit City with Holland Dozier and Holland, who were the three writers from Motown, and they had their own company called Invictus Records. And so it took us 4 years going down there. That we actually got an album out of them, one album, and it was interesting, and it was a really good band, though, a very good band. And then we had one song on the radio called "Don't Roll Those Bloodshot Eyes at Me," and at that particular time when I was with Lucifer, I started to change my voice, and I changed my voice so much for the album that Billboard magazine gave us a write-up saying that Lucifer, "Don't Roll Those Bloodshot Eyes at Me," their lead singer Eugene Smith, his voice is a cross between Moms Mabley and Jerry Lewis. and and everybody hated it. Then nobody liked my up here. Nobody liked my voice like that. Even my parents were saying, "Why don't you sing like you used to?" And everybody, but I was having fun, you know. I did. After that album and everything, I went back to singing like I normally did, but I just did it for fun. It was fun. It was just an experiment, you know. I didn't intend to sing like that for the rest of my life.
Yeah, I've always cherished that album. Actually, it's a fine piece of work, but I think the Moms Mabley Jerry Lewis line is a pretty good one. It's pretty accurate too.
Yeah.
But the songs are outstanding.
Do you have a copy of it?
I have a copy of it.
You
Do
do?
it.
Oh.
Is
Ah,
that
that's it. Lucifer.
good? And
Oh,
I guess Bobby Washington would be the name, that some people, possibly some people even out in the audience this evening would be familiar with, the brother of Jackie Washington. Who's a lot,
yeah, especially Jackie too. Yeah.
yeah. But he was a fine singer himself.
Who's that, Bobby?
Some of the harmonies he created.
Oh,
Yeah,
Bobby had
Bobby
this
did.
silky, smooth voice, and
Mhm.
he could sing those ballads and everything. His voice was very, very pleasing to listen to, you know.
Yeah,
He could do Marvin Gaye really, really well.
yeah. I wish we had tapes of that.
Yeah, yeah, I know what you mean. It would be nice, eh?
Actually, it'd be nice to even have a CD of this thing. That Invictus label. Who had chairman of the board is and Frida Payne, and all of
Yeah,
their material's been out on CD. Not your album.
you know,
Uh,
Harrison Kennedy was part of that.
Harrison too.
Yeah, he was part of that roster down in Detroit. He was with the chairman of the board.
Right? And he also did a solo album on
Hmm.
CD. Bits and pieces have come out over the years on CD. And, well, hope springs eternal with the Lucifer. We'll see the light someday.
You never know. You never know, eh?
And you never know. So then you went you went back to having smaller bands. Lucifer was a huge band, I guess. It's pretty expensive over. So you went back to smaller bands and eventually the warm up
Yeah,
band. Great days
yeah.
for you. Great days for you, I hope. It was Midwich Cuckoo and Hotel California in Toronto, and where the kept it.
Yeah,
Then
we.
you
Oh, I was just agreeing with you. The Midwich Cuckoo Hotel, California, and the warm-up band actually started up in Collingwood,
Mhm.
and that's where it started. And I was just doing a solo thing at the hotel. I think it was the Waverly, no, the Tremont or something, no, the Waverly Hotel. Anyways, and then one night, the guitar player, John Judge, came in and said, "Could you get up and play some songs with me?" And I said, "Sure." But he kept coming back, and then the keyboard player came, and then the bass player came, and then a drummer came. It was like, and all of a sudden we had this band, and it was kind of neat, how it all got together, and then we actually the bass player left, and another bass player, Carl Rabinowitz, came into the band, and then we started just playing all over the place. We were a self-contained band. We booked ourselves. We had our own vehicle for transport. We had our own PA system. We even paid for our own for the Eugene Smith and the Warm-Up Band album. We paid for that. Back then in the 70s at the bank, they had what they called creative banking. And
Always have creative.
excuse me? What was that? Well, they had creative banking anyways. And so that meant that the bank would own the master tape until we paid for it, and then I mean we got to use it, but they owned it. And when we paid back all the money that we had borrowed to do the album, then the ownership would come back to us. So that's how the Warm Up Band album actually was created, from what I was told.
And you had a bit of a hit with one of the songs on that.
Yeah, a song called Amy I wrote. It became number 12 in Leamington, Ontario. And John Judge had written a song called Walk Away. And Walk Away, one of the stations in Toronto was put on what they called gold rotation. And it was played over and over and over again in Toronto, called Walk Away. I sang the song, but John Judge, the guitar player, had written it.
Yeah, well, I didn't know it was on rotation like that. I'm certainly quite familiar with the song, and I did hear Amy a lot. I never never heard it in Leamington, never was in it. I'll trust you that it was number 12.
Well, I got to play in Leamington two summers ago, I guess it is. John and Michelle Law, they were here in the Valley for a while, and now they have a festival that they do every year, except for this year. So I got to be in Leamington, and it's in Leamington, Ontario. So I got to go to Leamington, Ontario after 40 years, after the song was number 12 in Leamington. I actually got to go there.
Did you play the song?
Yes, yeah, I did. I played the song. Oh, yeah, I played it. Yeah, yeah.
Any old timers get excited and?
Well, I'm sure they didn't even know who I was until I would just tell everybody that this was the town that this song became number 12 on the radio station during the 80s. Yeah.
Well, that's claim to fame. I know a couple of months ago, maybe, I guess the first interview in this series of Pioneers was with Bobby Blackburn, and I know in your period, I guess immediately post Hawkins, you spent some time playing with Bobby, and it sounded, from what I gather, a match with Saturday night, and all the musicians in town, visiting musicians, would come and jam, or come and listen and then jam. Do you remember those days?
I remember Bobby Blackburn. When I first saw Bobby Blackburn was up at the picnic in Onsell.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't think that picnic would be a picnic without Bobby Blackburn playing it. Because first time I ever saw him I was 13, 14 years old. And there was Bobby up there playing then, you know what I mean? And so then later on, after I joined Ronnie, I was out of sorts trying to put bands together. It wasn't happening. Bobby hired me to play at the Zanzibar,
Yeah.
downtown Toronto on Yonge Street, along with his cousin Billy Blackburn. And the guitar player was Terry Logan, I believe. And and they played every day because it was 6 days a week back then when you played, right?
Mhm.
Or nights. Um, we would play from 12 o'clock in the afternoon until 4 in the afternoon.
Oh,
And I was always amazed that the people who would come into the club at 12 o'clock in the afternoon when the bar opened up, they'd be coming in with their, oh, it was amazing. But anyways, I got to play there with Bobby for a year or so, I guess, maybe, or something like that. And I played several gigs with Bobby over the years, and it was always interesting playing with him. I always enjoyed it. And we played some jazz songs. He plays the organ and sings blues, some jazz and bluesy type music. And Bobby's been around for a long time, yeah.
yeah. Well, the Terry Logan's still around too. I saw him play well before COVID, but not that long before COVID. As
Mm.
I think, a jazz guy at heart. To see him fitting right in with the jazz.
Yeah, it was interesting downtown Young Street in those days. But yeah, so that's Bobby Dean. Well, Bobby Dean, Bobby Blackburn. He called himself Bobby Dean, and I think he calls himself Bobby Blackburn now. I would.
Nowadays.
He-
You know, I guess in your very early days, did you ever see him play with the Gems? You had Bobby Dean and the Gems you were talking.
No, I never saw Bobby play because I was too young then, right? I was too young to get into clubs or whatever, at that particular time.
It was, I think it was called the Net. Remember the Net? I think it was a theater on the lake shore. And there's something to but if you're too young, you're too young.
Hmm.
It was the Mimicombo, you must remember. Yeah.
Um, the Mimicombo.
Yeah.
That was the Mimicombo is in Mimico. Well, it was in Mimico. It was a roller skating rink, and this is before I was just getting into music, and I guess I must have been about 16 or 17, I guess around there. And they had James Brown there,
Right.
and it was the most exciting show I had ever seen in my life. It was like James Brown dancing around the fabulous flames. They're singing background and doing their moves. And it's a 16-piece band orchestra, doing James Brown. And then above him on a riser was these beautiful black girls dancing. And then, but you could always hear somebody talking, announcing it. And here's the man, here's the, tut, 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 here's the man. And you look around, but you don't see it. And then I looked up in the rafters, and they had a guy way up in the rafters, sitting on a platform with a desk, and a table and a microphone and a lamp. And he was James Brown's announcer. But you had to look. I just happened to look up into the rafters of the Mimicombo, and there he was, right? And it was the most exciting show I'd ever seen. Yeah.
Wow. Well, I remember in the warm-up days, you had a song that went down in Mimico. They do the Mimicombo.
Yeah, yeah,
One,
yeah,
two, three, skate, 1, 2, 3, fly.
yeah. Yeah, do the
So the
Mimicom.
Mimico people would always sing along to that. I
Yeah,
don't know.
yeah, they did. And then years later, when the warm up band broke up, well, it was one of the songs that just kind of disappeared.
Yeah.
But every once in a while, somebody would ask me, "Can you do the Mimicombo? Do the Mimicombo?" And I'm trying to remember it, but I could never get it all together.
Yeah. Well, it's fun times. Fun song. Fun time. So after the warm-up band, you've continued recording, and you could continue doing putting together bands and playing solo gigs. And you did another album, just in a vinyl album, with the Rock by Day, Roll by Night, which I think has a notable story that I hope you'll share with us. That came to be and
Well,
happened.
Rock by Day, Roll by Night. That song ended up on Miami Vice, and this was in the '80s and I was recording in a studio in a house with Rick Morrison, and he was producing it, and so I was writing all these different songs, and one of the songs was Rock by Day, Roll by Night. So and he was involved. Rick Morrison was involved with there it is. Rick Morrison was involved with doing music of his own. He was a sax player with Tembo Records, and Tembo Records was owned by Roger Whittaker. And so, anyways, Rick took the song down to Tembo Records to the president and said, "This, I have this really good song," and so he played it for him. And the president right away thought that it could be put on a TV show at a party scene. So he happened to know the producer of Miami Vice or whatever, and so he sent it down to him. And the next thing you know, it was on Miami Vice, which was one of the biggest shows at the time. Like 15 million people watched that show every Friday night. And what they did was they brought Phil Collins onto the show, and it was the first time any program on TV had done that. So Phil Collins brought another 15 million, so 30 million people watched this particular episode because Phil Collins was on it, and my song was used at a party scene. And there's Phil Collins bopping along to my music in the background. So it got to be on Miami Vice. It was kind of neat at the time. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, since then, I guess you stayed in Toronto, but eventually you moved out to BC, where you are now.
Yeah, I've been out here 21 years now. I think around 21, 22. And I had lived out here in the 70s for 5 years in Port Moody. And then I went back to Ontario, and then 21 years ago I decided to come back, and I've been here on the island for the last 21 years or so.
It seems to me that you've never stopped write songs, and you've never stopped recording songs.
I keep recording. I keep recording music. Right now, I'm not doing any recording, but I just do whatever comes up now. I just I'm still performing whenever I can, but it's not as much as I used to. But I'm still enjoying it. That's the main thing. I still enjoy going out and performing and having people enjoy what I do. But I have to say that this summer, because of the pandemic, all my gigs got canceled. And I was talking to another musician friend of mine because I was thinking, at first I was upset because they got canceled, and then some that were pending got canceled. But this year, this summer, I suddenly realized that I wasn't performing for anybody this summer. And all of a sudden, I started to really enjoy the fact that I didn't have to go out and play anywhere. Um, and I felt like I was on a sabbatical or something. I could just enjoy myself without having to sing or drive to the gigs or whatever. It just felt really good this summer. That's how I've been getting through it. I still miss it every once in a while, but it's been kind of neat not have to play.
Well, I guess for my own selfish reasons, I hope it is a sabbatical and not a retirement. Performing with them.
What's that?
I've seen you a couple times in BC. Just the last time I saw you had this great, an old style new song, Boogie Woogie.
Which
Uh,
one?
Boogie Woogie,
Oh yeah, Boogie Woogie.
which has tons of words and it has a very 50s feel to it.
Doing
Uh,
the yeah, doing the Boogie Woogie. Yeah, well, I remember the first time you heard it, you went, "Holy Jesus!" A lot of lyrics to that song.
yeah, I was impressed that anybody could remember all those lyrics to the song they just written.
Yeah, yeah, I know. I still do it. I keep doing it so I don't forget. I do it even at home. I'll just sit there and all of a sudden I'll just do the boogie woogie just to keep it in my head, because I'm not remembering those songs like I used to. Like, I'm still remembering them, but they're not the actual songs themselves aren't. You have to be out there performing, and some songs go by the wayside. But it's nice bringing back a song because I feel like when I try to remember a song that I had written, say 5, 6 years ago, but I don't do it anymore, it's like I'm learning a new tune all over again. It's like I'm
Mhm.
creating this new song.
Yeah. Well, I'm not sure if I've ever seen you do it on guitar. Certainly, I've seen you do Boogie Woogie with kalimba, which was, I guess, a new direction. Not exactly new, but pretty new direction for you. It seems
Yeah.
focusing on kalimba more than guitar.
Well, my kalimba was just something I have two of them, and it was just sitting around. And one day I just started messing around with it, and because I've got rhythm, I was able to put some rhythms to the sounds I was making. And the next thing you know, I went, oh well, okay. And then I started putting lyrics to the sounds and the rhythm, and I've come up with. I actually did one CD where it's just me and my kalimba.
Is it easier to write songs on kalimba? Do you find?
Um, is it easier to write songs on the kalimba?
Yeah.
Yeah, not really. It's just because it's a different instrument.
Mhm.
So it's just a little bit different than playing my guitar like this. I'm going like this.
Yeah.
Instead of going like this, I'm going like this.
Well, is there anything you want to play for us now? You feel free to say no. But,
Well, I didn't know I was going to be playing anything.
I don't know.
I
A
didn't
very
know.
small guitar, or
Well, I don't know. Can you hear this?
time for any.
Can
Yep.
you hear it? Can you hear it? Now, Nimble Joe has sweet smell flow. She'd like to go out and dance. Said, we'll go downtown to Big Girl's Place. That's where we'll get our chance. Well, the band will be grooving and the people will be moving to the sound of the funky beat. That's when Joe and Flo lost control. Started moving their feet on down, down, hips to the left and hips to the right. Bumping, grinding all through the night. Boogie, boogie, a boogie, boogie. Ha, ha, lift her up high, set her down the light, kiss on the cheek, now that's alright. Boogie, boogie, ha, ha, a boogie, boogie. Ha, ha. Now Joe and Flo and the rest of the gang, they danced till the sun came up. Now do their steps to the rooster strut. Now they just couldn't get enough. From across the room, Big Earl shouted out, "Now one more funky treat." Well, the crowd all yelled, "Thank you, Earl." Starting moving their feet on down, down hips to the left and hips to the right, bumping, grinding all through the night. Boogie, boogie, ha ha, boogie, boogie, ha ha. Now boogie, 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 boogie. Boogie Boogie.
Oh, thank you, sir.
You're welcome. You're welcome. So what do
So,
you?
hmm?
No, go ahead.
I was just going to say, you've got some thinking to do, or time to do some thinking with the pandemic on. So, what do you see for 2021? I think 2020 is a write-off.
2021. I'm not sure if you. I think some of the arts are opening up a little bit more now. And if people do the right things, it might be possible that some of the places that are having a hard time can get going again. Some of them are having some music here and there. But one of the things that human beings have is that we have this capacity to be creative. So, and it's just everybody has that, in there. So I think because we have that capacity, we'll be able to create situations even more so for 2021, hopefully.
Well, I hope so. We, I think the only music that we've seen we saw this summer was basically outdoor karaoke, parked under some hydro wires.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah.
And it was all 80s music because it was all 80s people.
Yeah, yeah, so maybe that's what'll happen. I'm sure that it'll start coming around more, but people have to be more diligent and more try to be as safe as possible. I mean, the thing about this pandemic is it's an enemy that we can't see. Like, that's the whole thing. So it changes everything. When you can't see your enemy, then how do you fight it? But I think in Canada we're doing a pretty good job of it, of fighting the pandemic.
Well, leaving the pandemic topic alone, I wanted to ask you if you have any uh, specific audience for your specific gigs, whether you performed or you saw other people performing that sticking on. They're really good or really bad or just really different.
Dates that were good or bad?
Not dates, no gigs.
Gigs, yeah, that's what I mean.
Yeah, no, no.
Well, I would say that most of the gigs I've ever played with a band or just being a guest or have always been very good. I can't think of any dates that were gigs that were not so good. It does happen, but most I would say the majority of has been good.
Mhm. Any stories like the roof caved in or
Well,
the stage fell apart or if you want it?
Well, it's only fallen apart because there's been a couple of times on stage when I had been drinking too much or something or like that, and I got laughing and I couldn't stop laughing, and I would start laughing in the middle of a song for some reason or other, and the whole song would just fall apart one by one because the guys in the band would start laughing, and then the audience would be laughing, and they didn't know what they were laughing at. Well, they were laughing at me laughing, but I didn't. But I couldn't explain why I was laughing because it was something that was momentary, and it would just disappear. But it would still stick with me, and I'd just be laughing like crazy. So those are kind of disaster gigs that have happened, Um, um, one
Oh, there's
time
worse
with,
things.
excuse me.
I was going to say there's worse things that are contagious than laughter.
Yeah, there is. Well, there
Okay.
was this one time with Ronnie Hawkins when I caught the flu in the middle of the set, after the first set. Now Ronnie had gone to the fights and he left me in charge of the band while he was at the fights, and I got the flu and I said I'm going home. I couldn't. I was shaking and everything else, so I went home and I doctored myself up and I got into bed, and then the phone rang and it was one of the guys in the band, might have been John Till, I'm not sure, but saying I had to come back down to the club because if I didn't, the club owner was going to fire the band. So I had to get up and get dressed and get a cab and go back down to the cocktail on Yonge Street and sit on stage on a chair and perform the rest of the night. You know, that was pretty bad. That was not good. I was not a happy camper then.
Well, Uma said at the start that they'd be turning it over to questions from the audience if there are any. I mean, we do have one, and it's what's the biggest lesson you learned from your time with Ronnie Hawkins?
What's the biggest lesson I learned?
Yeah.
I think the biggest lesson I learned with Ronnie, one of them, there were many, but one of the ones was to be as consistent as possible when you were on stage. Um, and we rehearsed. We used to rehearse after the gig was over at 1 o'clock, and we'd come back to come back to the club 4 nights a week. We rehearsed after we finished playing, and sometimes we'd be playing till 4, 5, 6 in the rehearsing after they locked the doors, and going over songs that we had made mistakes. Ronnie wanted to do these songs, but it was that being consistent and playing as often as possible on stage, and the band got to be really, really good because of it.
The way you speak about it seems like it wasn't really, you didn't see it as a hardship at the time. You saw it as an opportunity to.
Well, it was
In fact,
more. It was like a school, the Ronnie Hawkins school of hard knocks and learning downtown Young Street, you know, and playing in the clubs, you know. But it was steady. It was very steady. I mean, like Ronnie at that time could have worked 52 weeks out of the year if he wanted to, but he would take time off, you know, a couple of weeks here, maybe, and then a couple of weeks later on down the road he might take time off. But it was a steady. He had all kinds of jazz musicians, up and coming jazz musicians. It was 14 of us at one time in the band, you know. So and you know it was steady, you know, 6 nights a week and a Saturday afternoon matinee. It was an experience. It wasn't hard times. We were all learning at the time, and it was fun. It was enjoyable, I have to say, yeah.
Did you travel far afield with Ronnie Hawkins?
Mostly Ontario, and then down south to Arkansas, Oklahoma, Tennessee. We played places like that with Ronnie for 6 weeks down there, and Texas. I went to Texas also.
No. Were those places, were they an eye opener for you?
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah, yeah. When I got back to Canada, when I'm driving the Rolls Royce, and I got back to Canada, and we crossed the border, we drove up the high. I drove up the highway a little ways, and Ronnie's in the back, and with a couple, and two of the other musicians, and in the band, and Ronnie's, and I pulled over to the side of the road, and he said, What are you doing, son?" I said, "I'll be right back." So I got out of the Rolls Royce, and I just went, and I got down on all fours, and I kissed the ground, the Canadian soil. I was so glad to be back in Canada. And that was in the 60s.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But you wrote you eventually wrote a nice song um, about not all of those days that time, but I take it that country on the jukebox.
Oh, geez, yeah, yeah.
An
Yeah.
interesting song written about that trip, I suppose.
Well, it was basically well, first of all, the reason I wrote the song was in Hamilton, on the country station there in Hamilton. They were having a contest, and so anyways, I decided to, and you had to write it was country music, so you had to write, but I didn't know that you had to have three country songs. I thought you just had to have one, but you had to submit three. And so I sat down and wrote this country on the jukebox, and then I found out that you had three, and I only had about a day or something. I'm not a really fast writer, so I didn't send the song in, but I ended up with a really neat country tune for me called "Country on the Jukebox."
Well, it says right in the song that you sing every once in a while. You sung a country song, but never two in a row.
Yeah, that's right. I may have sang a country tune, but never three in a row. Well, I like country music. I like this, and I think it has a lot to do with Ray Charles, sort of, because he crossed over into that field, and so he got me interested in being able to sing country music, and I do like it. There's quite a number of great country songs out there that you don't have to sing them like country music, you can just sing them, you know what I mean? Like, but people remember them.
Oh yeah, it's feeling music. I've noticed you like doing. Seeing it
Like I
in
like,
a number of country music songs, but not country style. Well,
well,
there's
I
another
like,
question from the audience here.
oh,
There's another question, well, from Carol Rabinovich. Maybe it's Carl. Uh, how did it feel opening for the Beach Boys in Ottawa?
the
Glad you-
Beach Boys, it was an experience that well, they had a light show, um, and apparently it was $10,000 or $20,000 for this light show, and the whole stage was all in white. All the instruments were all in white, and it was because of the light show that they had. And they were real nice guys, and um, I remember driving in to the arena with Teddy Grimes, who was the trumpet player, singer, keyboard player in our band, the warm-up band, and we drove in with our equipment. And we're in our van, and we take a look at and they had like tons of equipment, like it was a big mountain of speakers and everything. And we drove in, and Teddy got really embarrassed because we take our little bit of our little amps out. It was like David and Goliath. It was like Teddy says, "Come on, let's go, let's go." I said, "Why?" He said, "I'm so embarrassed. Look at their equipment compared to ours." We had just this little tiny little bunch of amps and speakers. That was about it. But it was fun. I think there were about 16 to 18,000 people in the audience at the time, and it was fun. Yeah, it was okay.
Oh, that was Carl Rabinovich. And the first question was mixed in. So thanks to both of you for your questions, and if there's any others out there, then please
Yeah.
on. Yeah. The was 18,000 with the Beach Boys. That's a pretty big audience. Were there other large audiences that you played for?
Well, the biggest audience I ever played for was with the Majestics, and we played at Maple Leaf Gardens, um, with opening up for the Dave Clark Five when we,
Oh,
when we were teenagers. Now there were four other bands. There was a band from Montreal called the Esquires. There was Little Caesar and the Councils, David Clayton Thomas and the Shays, and Bobby Curtola and his band. And then there were the Majestics. So, and each band was given a half hour on stage. But you couldn't see anything because the lights then, they didn't have the same kind of lighting that they have today. It was just all these white lights on you, like just blasting down on you, so you could see maybe some heads out there, but there were 26,000 screaming kids uh, at this thing. And Al Baliska was the MC from Chum. And so there was a big argument backstage. And Al Baliska was listening because the manager for the Dave Clark Five was screaming "Get get that bum off the stage," because Bobby Curtola was the last band to be on there, and he's going, "Get that bum off this," because he went overtime, and he's screaming, "I'm taking my boys back to England if you don't." And so I decided to take a look. So I go into the audience. Nobody's paying any attention to me, but so I go out there, and there's Bobby Curtola doing overtime, and this was causing the commotion. But he was going, Things go better with Coca-Cola. Things go better with Coke. And then all the guys in the band had those little bottles of Coca-Cola back then. And they all had a bottle of Coke and they'd all take a drink and go, and that was causing the big commotion backstage with the manager from the Dave Clark Five and Al Baliska. It was so funny, Bob. He said, things go better with Coca-Cola, and they all take a drink. I guess he had a contract with Coca-Cola, to advertise it.
So,
So, so that was the big. That's probably the biggest audience that I ever performed for.
did you have the sense that it was 26,000 people, or were they just?
Well, we were told it was, and when they, the sense of it being that big is when the Dave Clark Five came on, all those kids started screaming, and you couldn't hear the band at all. And they were just screaming like crazy, and it just took a chill right through my whole body because I'd never experienced that before. You get a 26,000 people all screaming pitch, like and flashes going on with the cameras and everything. Yeah, it was quite something. Yeah.
Well, I'll just read one last comment from the audience. Hello from New Toronto. This is from Nina Stormy. Do you ever come back to Mimico? Enjoyed the conversation and the Kalimba Blues.
No, I haven't been back to Bimico in, it's been quite a number of years, not that long, but I haven't been. I go back every once in a while now, and I go to Hay Avenue and take a look at the house that I grew up in from when I was a baby till I was 5 years old. And that's about the closest I've been through New Toronto and stuff like that, along the lakeshore. It all looks the same to me, except there are a few buildings that are different. But the main core, Mimico, like the high school's still there, the public school's still there. Like everything looks the same, except for a few buildings are gone.
I've noticed the time here, so I guess we could probably close it. And I guess it's fitting that we ended up where we started on our little street in Mimco.
There she is.
Thanks very much, Eugene. It's been fun. And over to back to Huma.
Yeah, I'll just maybe do a real quick outro, and thank you so much for both of you, to both of you, Eugene. Thank you so much for joining us, and Bill. Actually, just following that question about Mimico, maybe we can quickly say, Eugene, is it your website is the best way for people to follow and be connected to you, to watch the upcoming shows, hopefully,
Yeah, hopefully is right.
Will that be the best way for people to follow you, I guess? Yeah, right? And that's eugenesmith.ca, I guess, right?
You got it.
Okay, great.
And will you be playing your Tuesday gigs at the showroom online?
Yes, I'm going to keep doing the Tuesday gigs here as long as I possibly can. Yeah, so we'll be doing next Tuesday I'll be here.
Exactly. And thank you so much for Duncan Showroom as well. And to anyone who's watching right now, make sure to follow them on YouTube as well. It's Duncan Showroom. When you look it up on YouTube, you can watch and follow all these live shows, and everything is happening. And I think Eugene is every Tuesday there. Correct me if I'm wrong, Eugene.
Yep, you got it. You got it. Good night, everybody.
Exactly. And I think, thank you so much, everyone who tuned in tonight to watch the interview. Just very quick couple of things. So tomorrow there will be Miss Emily's Maple Blues Awards performance from last year's show. It's going to be on TBS YouTube channel at 6 p.m. Eastern time. And then we will be back actually this Friday again with Joel Johnson Band's performance video. It's a video live streamed on our Facebook again as part of the Res Blues 25th anniversary celebration series. And on Monday, we'll be back again with the mental health and wellness workshop. So these are all can be found on our Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, as well as the website. And hope you can join us again. Otherwise, I guess we all wish you a good night.
Thank you.
Thank you so much again.
Thank you.
Good night.
Good
Good
night.
night.